But first, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Steve Conley, founder of the Academy of Life Planning. He's got some really interesting ideas about where life planning and the role of the financial advisor goes from here, so I'll let him tell you all about them. Over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Justin. So life planning, I know a lot of you might or may not be interested in life planning, but I'm hoping at the end of this session, then you're probably a lot more interested, because there's a question that we need to ask. Are we actually on a journey moving away from product-focused advice to holistic planning? Yes or no? Certainly we want our future to be commercially exciting for us and sustainable. And can life planning actually form a part of that and help us on that journey? Well, hopefully I can answer that question for you as we go through this morning's session. What is actually holistic planning and what is life planning? Well, holistic planning is sort of everything. If you look at all the aspects of financial planning and for everyone, so it's every need and for all people, that is the holistic process. Life planning really is the difference between product-focused advice and holistic planning. So I call life planning non-intermediating financial planning, so you can differentiate it from some of the other terms that we use. You could call it lifestyle financial planning. You could call it cash flow forecasting. You could call it financial coaching, or it could be part one of a two-part process in your sales system. The product-focused advice, on the other hand, is product intermediation, regulated financial advice, product research, personal recommendations and implementation. And it could be part two of a two-part process, the first being the client-centered conversation, the second being the money-centered conversation. And what I say is life planning is really the difference. It's holistic planning, less product-focused advice. And the life planning or non-intermediating financial planning can be a regulated activity if it's done not in preparation for a regulated activity. So you could actually set up a separate business as a non-intermediating financial planning firm rather than having a two-part process. And actually that new business can be set up so that it's not regulated. So that's what we're going to look at. So kind of what brings you to here today to be interested in actually looking at life planning or holistic planning, or this move to holistic planning? You could be a product-focused advice or model at the moment, but there's lots of problems with that. Not least of all, maybe you have a lot of paperwork, or perhaps you're finding that your time is limited because you're exchanging your time for money. You can perhaps only see so many clients in a year, 40, 50, 60 reviews in a year. It's going to be a pretty busy calendar. The other thing that is impacting you is the regulations. Obviously, there's a big burden as a product-focused advisor. And recently, we're seeing the permissions restricted on things like DB transfers and stuff. And of course, COVID is impacting our income stream. New business incomes are down significantly because of the inability to sign agency agreements, visit clients in their home and that sort of thing. And of course, the ongoing revenue, which on average is about 2/3 of revenue for the typical practice, that's down because of markets being down. So we are impacted by that. But the biggest impact really, why it's a good time to focus on this, is the cost of running a product advisor model. Because we got FCA fees going up, we got FSCS levies, PII insurance bills going up, and the regulators asking us to look at capital adequacy at a time when we're kind of, our funds are hit, and it's causing a lot of people to think about quitting. And I say, don't quit. Let's have a look at what we can do with the model. We could probably do something to take you to a more sustainable and commercial model by looking at holistic planning and the benefits that might bring to your business. So picture this: you are looking at all the needs of the client in holistic planning. Now, bear with me at the moment, because you're probably looking at a part of this hierarchy of needs at the moment, maybe the financial freedom element, because you can't work out how you can make money looking at some of the other elements here. So, for example, the cash flow, the kind of basic model at the bottom there, that's typically for about 60% of the population who have little or no savings. They need help day-to-day management. But what we're seeing with COVID, and the impacts that has of people being furloughed and now got 70, 80% of their income, but not 70 or 80% of their bills. So that even people with wealth are getting into difficulty on cash flow and could do with some assistance on that. Once we've got the cash flow sorted, we might be looking as a holistic planner at financial safety. And this is where we look at things like protection and insurance. So obviously, if we lose a member of family, that could have a significant effect on the family finances, and that needs to be discussed. Then 95% of the population have less than £100,000 of investable assets, and the focus for them might be to accumulate wealth, and there's conversations that we can have there. And then, of course, the 5% of the population have got more than £100,000 and would consider perhaps moving those assets to the product advisor for them to draw down, help people to draw down and enjoy a very happy retirement. And that's a big focus for financial advisors. And not least of all is legacy, which is what I call self-transcendence, where we're thinking about not just having a great life, but actually the world being a better place for us having lived. And these are typical areas that we might look at as a holistic planner. But what happens in practice, because of the way things work, is that we don't look at all of these areas. As a regulated advisor, we might just look at one area, which is retirement planning. So we might have a threshold in our product advice practice of £100,000 of investable assets, and we just look at financial freedom. Now, life planning can come into the financial freedom conversation because you plan an ideal retirement and then you look at the money and the financial architecture to support it. But it's not really looking at the whole picture. And if I could show you a way that you can actually look at the whole picture for all clients and make the same amount of money that you would just by looking at financial freedom and not have these limitations on time and things, would that be something that you might be interested in? Because that's what I'm hoping to show you, to be able to advise on all of these areas and not just be looking at the money, but looking at all aspects of someone's life, their well-being, in their mental well-being, physical well-being, emotional well-being, and spiritual well-being. So it's not just wealth is not just what you have in your bank account, but it's what you have in every area of your life. So that's really where I'm going to focus. So that's holistic planning. Now, the life planning element, the non-intermediating life planning, can that help you to deliver holistic planning to every area of those needs, to every client? Well, let's have a look at this non-intermediating financial planner. And let's also have a look at the product advisor and how they might work together. Now, if they are in the same practice, then they are both regulated, unfortunately, because the non-intermediating financial planning is done in preparation for a regulated activity, which makes it regulated. But if they're separate businesses, so separate firms, then the non-intermediating financial planning can be just delivered in its own right. And the product advisor might be thinking, well, it's all very well, but I can only get paid if I have assets or funds under management. So let me show you this model. There are other assets that people have. If you consider assets on their own, then your planning model can adjust accordingly. So, for example, some people say, well, my business is my asset. Other people say, well, I'm a buy-to-let landlord. Now, these two characters here, the product advisor might think, well, that's all very well. They might want some financial planning, but I can't work out how I'm going to get paid. Let me show you a few other characters. Workplace pension, someone in a workplace pension, how does a product advisor advise them and get paid? Non-intermediating financial planner can, of course. Someone who has a discretionary manager, again, a non-intermediating financial planner can actually offer a financial planning service, but the product advisor might be thinking how they get paid. And of course, 1 in 3 funds now are sold through D2C platforms, and the D2C investor, again, they might have financial planning requirements, but the product advisor can't perhaps meet those requirements because they can't figure out how they're going to get paid. But the non-intermediating financial planner can. They can deliver members of the non-intermediating financial planning network. They don't walk away from those, and they can provide planning in all of those areas. An example of that might be somebody who is running a business. So their business is their asset. So that's what a non-intermediating financial planner does. They might look at someone's hobbies and create a side hustle and create a profit and loss account for the 3-year profit and loss account for the client, and then drop that into the lifetime cash flow forecast. And that way it adds real value for the client and creates an asset. So that's something that we can do. It's a bit like having a shop window, and instead of turning away 5 out of 6 clients, you accept all clients and you can offer a financial planning service. Something else my members do as well, because non-intermediating financial planning, you're not making a personal recommendation, you can actually offer it to groups of people all at the same time. So what we do is we run masterclasses. So the members run a masterclass. We might have 10 people attend a masterclass, and if it's the same amount of time, if you charge a tenth of the cost, you make the same amount of money. And something else we do as well, we look at subscription models. It's what I call a bit like a Netflix model. What we do is we put the recorded masterclass sessions onto a video platform, and people can download and subscribe to, perhaps if there's 100 people that do that, for 100th of the cost. Now, suddenly you can make financial planning available to a broader population, to all of those people that we had before that we were turning away with less than £100,000 of investable assets. We can now offer them financial planning services. And as a result of that, we can plug the advice gap. So what you need for that is you need the tools. And you see, with 100 people all at the same time, you can't really do 100 Voyant reports all at once. So what we have with the non-intermediating financial planners is we give them cash flow modelers that actually the client operates. So you can have your 100 people attending a conference, and they all have their own cash flow modelers, and the non-intermediating financial planning is actually acting as a teacher, and they teach everybody about the planning process while they actually operate their own system. So it's a client-centered tool. And we can do that. It's sort of like a Netflix model is what I call. But what you need for that is a process. So that's one of the things that we do. We provide a process to follow, because the process is very different. And we actually help the advisors as well go through their own side hustle, because creation and business plan. What we do is we use the process on our members to help them set up a non-intermediating financial planning business as a side hustle. And as a result of that, we can look at removing any obstacles that they might have that are preventing them being successful in their business. So it's a good time to look at that. So the question I'd like to ask you is, now I kind of explained how we can access, provide holistic financial planning or holistic planning to everyone in every need area on a commercially sustainable basis. Can life planning be the centre of what you're doing and the centre of your business model? So that's really what I wanted to talk about today. So yeah, so I think that's about where we are now. So if you've got, oh yes, one more thing. Yeah, obviously the Academy of Life Planning, what we have is we're a network, a global network for non-intermediating financial plans. What I found was that a lot of people were going on training courses and learning how to do life planning, and then they were coming back and finding themselves in the office on the Monday and really not having the ongoing daily support that you would normally get with regulated business. So I personally found that 10 years ago when I graduated from the Kinder Institute, and I know a lot of other people have found the same. So what we do is a very low-cost operation, provide ongoing daily support for people who want to be non-intermediating financial planners and have a bit of a community so people can talk to one another. This week, we were fortunate enough to be awarded some awards. It's the Best Financial Advisor Support Network for 2020 for SME News. And we also got the award for outstanding contribution to finance in 2020. So, so yeah, if you want to give it a go, you want to learn how to do holistic planning to groups of people, and remotely. That's another thing as well that we do. It's all digital, so it's very good for while we're in lockdown, being able to deliver a planning service online. So that's what we're about. So I'd like really just to open it up, see if people have got any questions that they'd like to ask at this stage. And so I take it from there, Justin, if we're going to get some questions.
Thanks, thanks so much, Steve. Some really interesting stuff. As ever, do put your comments in the chat box on the right hand side. David Owen already saying this is really good stuff. Thanks very much, David. Before we throw it open to them, a couple of questions from myself. You talk about this Netflix model and about advising groups. It is such a shift from how the UK financial planning profession has traditionally operated. How do you make that massive transition? I mean, I get if you're setting up a brand new firm, you can come in with this new fee model. But say I've got an advice firm of 4 or 5 advisors. Each has got 80, 100 clients, all charging 1% ongoing advice fee, typical advice business. How do you suddenly move to something that is so fundamentally different?
Yeah, so what the members do, so about half of my members are regulated advisors, and they're just giving up a day a week to set up a non-intermediating financial planning side hustle. And basically, it's everything they know. They've got all the knowledge and skills. They've got the people skills as well. So they've got everything, all the ingredients they need to make a successful kind of one-to-many operating model. There needs some support on social media. Some of them are doing video training courses. We've got some great podcasters as well. A lot of the advisors are doing podcast recordings now and going and placing podcasts on their channels and offering that for free. And then as a result of that, then what they can offer is like I say, masterclass. They need help and support in creating that and designing it. But that's really what the network's about, showing them how to do that. So we have some really great examples of some very successful advisors that are transitioning from, like you say, the traditional business where you typically got an assets under advice kind of fee structure to a kind of fee for service non-intermediating model, and where you do this one-to-many business model.
That fee bit's the interesting thing, is you mentioned things like masterclasses and workshop and podcasts, which are obviously widely available from a lot of people for no cost. How do you get into the minds of clients that this is worth whatever subscription fee a month, or this is, for when you want to tune into this ad hoc masterclass, you need to pay whatever amount?
Yeah, so you provide a lot of free content to get traffic. So webinars and podcasts are typically what we use at the ground level. And then during the podcast or during the webinar, you upsell the next level, which might be the subscription service, the Netflix service, which typically £10 a month, something like that, you might offer. So, if you want regular information and updates or content or access recordings from previous masterclasses, then you can offer a £10 a month subscription. And then what happens is people do that and they can cancel it at any time if they don't want to sustain it. But what you got is a regular income into your business. And then what you do is you cross-sell to that group. You say, well, I'm running a 5-week masterclass where we've got a few hours each week. We're going to go through these subjects. If you'd like to know more in-depth information, you probably get about 20% cross-sell, upsell from your subscription base up to your masterclass, which is what I call the one-to-many model. And then during your masterclass, then you sell your coaching business, your one-to-ones, and you'll probably get, again, about 20% upsell on that. So it's just basically having a process in place where you're offering a lot of free content, getting your name out there, getting your content out there, and then being able to upsell people into the next level, the higher ticket services. And then from your coaching business, then if you still have a connection with your product advice business, there can be a referral there where product advice is required. But like I said in the presentation, I find a lot of people these days are running their own money on platforms in their business, and what you want to do is be able to offer a service to everyone. and I think you can do it. But also, Justin, having the different levels there, you've got services that you're offering for free that everyone can afford, services for £10 a month that people who have little or no savings, they can afford that. So you're actually now plugging the advice gap by having these models in place in your business. And also you move away from, instead of exchanging your time for money, you're exchanging your know-how for money. So you get your time back, so you're not working 90 hours a week, whatever. You're having a decent life plan yourself as well, which is really important.
Couple more questions flooding in on the comments. Thanks for that. One from George says, can you elaborate on the boundaries in this process between the planning you make in NIFP, non-intermediating financial planner, and standard regulatory process, i.e. how personal can the recommendations be as a non-intermediating financial planner?
Yeah, so you cannot make, as a non-regulated, non-intermediating financial planner, you can't make personal recommendations about this, the sale of the purchase or sale of an investment product. But you can do cash flow modeling, for example. You can do planning, tax planning, retirement planning. You can do cash flow forecasts of someone's retirement. You could educate them on evidence-based investing, educate them on ESG filtering, on behavioural economics, and the need to not sell low and buy high during times of market volatility. You can do all of that.
Hasn't this been the problem, though, and the FCA has been very keen on encouraging guidance as well as advice, that actually a lot of providers and a lot of advisors say, that sounds generic, that's great, but I worry that if someone brings a complaint to me, it's going to count as that regulated advice and I'm on the hook still.
Yeah, so it all comes down to making a personal recommendation. If it sounds like advice, it probably is, And so what you have to do is make it very clear that what you're offering is education. The way I say is that we as advisors, no one advised us about how to run money and manage investments. We learnt it from textbooks and tutors. And I'm just saying that the public can also learn from textbooks and tutors to know how to run their own money or do their own plans. Now, if someone isn't confident about making an investment, then of course they can see a regulated product advisor who can make that investment for them. That's always the option. I'm just saying that there's a lot of people who don't need that, and they should get financial planning, access to financial planning, as much as the people that do want to buy a product. So yeah, so the difference, the regulation. Yeah, sorry, just.
Thank you. There's another one just coming from Sam Second. See if we can get through all of them before the time is up. Asking how to get clients shepherded into the right auto enrollment fund, for example, or the right risk profile on their ISA that they set up online. It would still be too expensive to advise them on simple but fundamental things.
Yeah,
does that go back to this whole advice versus guidance distinction, for example?
Yeah, so even guidance is a sale. So you basically have selling that's happening. So the regulator talks about advice sales and non-advice sales. And what I'm talking about is a non-sales advice, which rarely gets mentioned anywhere. There is no sale in non-intermediating financial planning other than you're selling yourself as if you like. The way I put it is it's not regulated because you are the regulator, because you have no alliances or agencies with any product providers. You are acting solely for your client. And so when it comes to, say, understanding the workplace pension scheme, you can provide education to the client so they have a better understanding. You can tell them, it's rather like when you asked a question in a CII exam, or you give the pros and cons of the different options, but you don't make a personal recommendation on your CII question paper. You just give all the pros and cons so that people can make an informed decision. And that's really what you're doing as a non-intermediating financial planner with the member of the workplace pension scheme, so that they can make an informed decision about which investment are right for them. They know the pros and cons of each, and they know whether and they know that if they take more risk or take less risk, what the consequences of that are, because you're giving them factual information on that.
Mm. Is there a risk that if we go too far down this non-regulated route, that it ends up getting hijacked by people who are claiming to be experts but aren't really the best place to do this non-intermediating guiding work? I mean, I'm thinking of the tens of newsletters that have sprung up in recent months, people like Nigel Farage even wading into saying, here's what to do with your money. How do you avoid being lumped in with those guys?
Yeah, so one of the roles that I've had this last a few years actually, is I'm ambassador for the Transparency Task Force. And one of the jobs I did, I led the market integrity team. We did a review of the codes of conduct across the professional bodies in the financial services industry. There are over 70 professional bodies. Now, it's the role of the professional bodies to oversee the profession rather than the role of the regulator. So if people have a professional qualification with the Chartered Insurance Institute, the chartered bankers, or with the actuaries, or with, it's those qualifications that really evidence our capability in the area. Now, I don't think Nigel Farage, with his cryptocurrency and gold bars, has any of those professional registrations. So I think, as in the accounting profession, it's the professional body really that is the assurance to the public that the accountant knows what they're talking about, and it really should be more down to the professional bodies in financial advice industry to evidence that the non-intermediating financial planner knows what it is they're talking about through qualification. So that would be my preference, rather than the regulator certifying people's competence. I'd rather professional organisations stepped up to the plate and certified the competence of the advisors.
Another kind of related question that's come in. Thanks for this one, Paul. How do you stop this being commoditized? Hard to provide differentiation on its own.
I think what is in danger of being commoditized is the product advisor and the life planner. I think you always need a person. You can't really have a robot advising on someone's life. It really has to be the person, but you can have a robot advising on someone on the product advice side, and that's what we're seeing develop in the marketplace. So I think, because investment returns have become commoditized, particularly this year, that now is the question. As a product advisor, can you differentiate yourself from D2C platforms sufficiently with your service? Whereas the non-intermediating financial planning is very personal. The plans are very different from one individual to the next, and it really can only be delivered by a person and not by a machine. So I think that this is the area that's not going to be at risk of being automated in the future.
You just have to find different niches, I guess, because one group session that you do for people in workplace pensions might be very different from one session that you do for people who are in D2C platforms or who have got buy-to-let property or anything like that. Are we sticking with one particular type of non-intermediating planner or planning that people go down, or can you really serve a spectrum of different financial needs here?
Yeah. As an advisor, what I would encourage, and what I do work with the members of the academy, is what your particular niche is. What is your skill set? Mm-hmm. Because what we want to do is kind of build a side hustle or a business, a full-time business, from your skill set, from your gifts and talents, your values and beliefs. So, for example, we have advisors who are in their 50s, and they're aiming at people in their 50s who are looking at retirement, not just from a financial perspective, but the psychology of moving from a work life into retirement. There's big impacts that can have in their life, and they want them to have a fulfilled retirement. On the other hand, I have a member in Hong Kong who's 28. He's a qualified advisor, chartered, and he's advising expats who are 20, kind of coming over to Hong Kong. Not to do what he did when he was 20, the lessons and the things he'd like to know about finances. If he knew then what he knows now, what he wouldn't do, and so he runs sensible investing workshops for expats in Hong Kong. So, it really depends on your niche, and you can find something that's really very different and not commoditized from your own gifts and talents and values and beliefs.
Just one more question. We've got a couple of minutes left. This one's from Andy Leggett. It was going back to the question on the potential for complaints to arise with this blurred boundary between guidance and advice. Andy asked, are there any examples where NIFP has been tested by the regulator?
There are systems that, well, like I say, a lot of the members are regulated as well. So we look at, we have examples where people are thinking of doing, making recommendations, but they are regulated advisors, and they have been tested on that. So, for example, I can think of a regulated advisor that was thinking about drawdown and thinking about the lifetime allowance charge, and was thinking about the client wanted to know which pension pot to draw down on, which is the best pension pot to draw down on. Now, that is advice leading to the selling of an asset, so that's definitely regulated activity. So, as long as you understand the regulations, then you can be quite clear on it. But like I say, where the focus of the Financial Conduct Authority is on, they have 27,000 regulated individuals, and they say that's, at the moment they don't have the resources to find the bad actors in that. And so what I'm saying is that if you have no ability to sell, you have no agencies, then there can be no risk of mis-selling. And and what you can do as a non-intermediating financial planner is point out that the bad actors, the Nigel Farages and the dangers of cryptocurrency, and everyone can access that, not just people who with £100,000 of investable assets who are getting seen by the regulated advisor, which is just 6% of the population are getting seen at the moment. And really what I'm talking about is something that the other 94% of people can also access to make sure that they're not going down cryptocurrency routes and that sort of thing.
Steve, that's a great note to end on, because that takes us perfectly to time. Steve, thanks so much. A virtual round of applause for Steve there.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, everybody.